Story 1. The Man Who Moved My Mirror by a Quarter Inch. This happened to me in 2017 when I was living alone in a small one-bedroom apartment in a pre-war building in New Haven, Connecticut. I'd moved there after finishing grad school, working as a research assistant at the university. I spent most nights alone. That wasn't unusual. I was used to the quiet. I liked it. The apartment was nothing special. Creaky floors, thin walls, radiator heat that clicked in the evenings. It was on the second floor, facing the alley. The only thing I really liked about the place was the mirror in the hallway. It wasn't mine. It came with the unit, bolted to the wall outside the bathroom. It was wide and old, with rounded corners and silvering that had started to fade around the edges. Something about it made the hallway feel less narrow. I got used to glancing at it without thinking. One night in October, I came home late from work. It was raining. I remember because I slipped a little on the front steps and cursed out loud. Inside, I locked up, threw my bag on the couch, and stood in front of the mirror, brushing off my jacket. I remember staring at myself longer than usual, not because I looked odd, but because something felt off. I didn't know what. I just stood there distracted. That was the first time I noticed it, though I didn't realize what it was yet. Something imperceptible, like the air had been disturbed. Over the next few days, the feeling returned. Subtle, irrational, but real, a kind of internal imbalance, like when you're being watched but can't locate the source. It wasn't fear, just dissonance. Then one morning I was brushing my teeth and looked over at the mirror in the hall. It felt slightly wrong. I stepped out and stared at it. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. But the top left corner looked, I don't know, misaligned. It was as if the frame had shifted just enough that I could sense it, even if I couldn't measure it. I ran my hand along the frame. It was cold, still firmly attached. But I found myself checking it again later that evening, and again the next morning. It became a kind of loop. I'd walk past it, pause, squint, check the alignment. I even measured the gap between the mirror and the molding. At some point, I became sure it had moved. Less than half an inch to the right. Maybe less. Maybe I was imagining it. But it wasn't just that. At night, I started having these moments, fleeting but vivid, where I'd catch my reflection from the corner of my eye and feel a beat behind, like the image lagged a fraction of a second. Again, I told myself I was tired, that I needed more sleep, that I was being paranoid. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to sound unwell. Then came the dream. It was so ordinary I almost dismissed it. Just a dream where I was brushing my hair in front of the mirror, and the reflection didn't match my motion. I was moving slowly. She wasn't. I remember waking up with a tight chest and a metallic taste in my mouth. That was the same morning I noticed the mirror had moved again, only this time there were faint scratches on the wall, horizontal ones, right at the edge of the frame. I stopped sleeping well after that, and I started closing the bathroom door at night, not because I thought anything was behind it, but because I couldn't stop staring at my own reflection. The worst part wasn't the shift. It was the way it made me question the rest of my space. Had the lamp always been angled like that? Was the book on the floor there this morning? I started taking photos, not to share with anyone, just for myself. Proof that things were the way I left them, or not. I had to go away for a weekend conference in Albany that November, just 2 days. I locked the place up tight and left Friday morning. When I got back Sunday night, everything looked the same, except it wasn't. The first thing I noticed was that the mirror was spotless. I don't mean normal clean, I mean polished. Every time I tried to clean it before, there were always streaks, always little bits of foggy residue. Not now. This time it gleamed. I leaned in, confused. There were no fingerprints, no smudges. The silvering damage on the bottom corner had somehow faded. I blinked, rubbed at it. Nothing. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I was running late and grabbed my old toothbrush from the cup. I stopped immediately. It was damp. I hadn't used that brush in 4 days. I'd brought a travel one with me. I checked it again. Damp. No water in the sink. No splash marks. The bristles were soft and slightly separated, as if used. I sniffed it. Mint. And something else. I rinsed my mouth out for 5 full minutes. I wanted to believe I'd forgotten using it, that I was confused. But my backup brush in the cabinet was bone dry, and the one on the sink wasn't where I'd left it. It was angled differently, turned toward the mirror. After work that day, I bought a new deadbolt. Then I called the building manager to ask if anyone had been inside for maintenance. He said no. No one had keys to my unit except for me and the super. That night, I went through my apartment room by room, cataloging objects. I wasn't looking for stolen items. I was looking for displacement. My books were aligned, but not exactly. My chair was a few inches off-center from the carpet indent. A nail was bent slightly on the photo frame above the couch, but nothing was gone. I started putting masking tape on things, bottom of drawers, corners of shelves. I placed a strand of hair across my closet door. I took pictures of every mirror, cabinet, door, and I changed the locks again. Still, every few days, I'd notice something tiny, the angle of the shower curtain. A sock turned the wrong way in the laundry basket. One time, the top of my shampoo bottle was unscrewed, even though I hadn't used it in 2 weeks. It wasn't leaking, just open. It started to feel like someone wasn't just entering, they were staying. Not long, just enough to unsettle. To leave no trace that would qualify as a crime, no broken windows, no forced entry, just a toothbrush, a mirror, a presence, a pattern of invisible trespassing. I finally called the police after the lock on my bedroom window was open one morning. I knew I hadn't left it that way. I never opened that window. It stuck when I tried. 2 officers came. I showed them the mirror, the toothbrush, the pictures. They were polite, but uninterested. "There's no sign of break-in," one of them said. "No theft, no physical threat." They filed it under a non-criminal disturbance and left, told me to get better locks, suggested maybe I was under stress from work. That night, I sat in front of the mirror and stared at myself for a long time. I didn't cry, I didn't panic, I just sat there and watched. The next morning, I bought a new mirror, heavy, modern, with a thick metal frame. I screwed it directly into the studs with 4 steel bolts. It didn't match the hallway, but I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control again. That feeling lasted 3 days. On the 4th morning, I woke up, walked past it, and stopped. There was a gap. I measured it. Exactly a 1/4 inch. The bolts were still there, not missing, not broken, just turned loose, each one unscrewed precisely and evenly, not enough to fall out, just enough to shift the mirror. The wall behind it was unmarked, no scratches, no fingerprints, just that same faint sense of something moved. I didn't call the police this time. I didn't even tell my friends. What could I say? No one had entered. Nothing was stolen. But something had returned. The mirror had been touched again. Not violently, not carelessly, intimately. I still live in that apartment. I've replaced every mirror in the place. I cover the hallway one with a cloth every night. But sometimes I forget. And when I do, I swear, just for a second, the reflection looks back at me with a slight delay, like it's waiting for me to notice or trying to see if I remember. Story 2. The caller who told me things I hadn't done yet. This happened to me in the spring of 2018. I was 29, living alone in a basement apartment outside of Minneapolis. I worked nights at a data processing center. The kind of job where you just sit under fluorescent lights and move numbers around until your vision goes soft. I didn't mind it. There wasn't much to interrupt. The first voicemail came on a Sunday. I didn't answer because I was in the shower and my phone was on silent. I only saw the notification when I came back into the room. 1 new voicemail, unknown number. There was no missed call listed, which was strange. I played the message. The voice was low and even, male. No trace of emotion. "Leave your umbrella at home tomorrow. You won't need it." That was it. Then a soft click. 11 seconds. I deleted it and didn't think much of it. I didn't even own an umbrella. But the next day, Monday, I left for work and passed a man on the stairs shaking off rain. I remember the look he gave me. Wet hair, drenched coat, like he envied my dry clothes. It hadn't rained near me, not a drop. But according to the weather map, most of the metro had gotten a full downpour. I remembered the message again that night. Not in a spooky way, just oddly accurate. I even told myself maybe it was spam, some random robocall predicting weather as a gimmick. The second voicemail came 3 days later. Don't take your normal exit on Thursday. There'll be a crash at the bottom ramp. Use the next one. You'll be delayed 4 minutes. That's fine. The voice didn't change. It wasn't warm or threatening, just information. Plain. This time I kept the message. I played it again before I left work on Thursday night just to test it. I usually exited at Park and 26th. I skipped it, took the next ramp instead. When I got home, I checked traffic alerts on my phone. There had been a multi-vehicle crash on Park, reported 12 minutes after I passed it. Time of incident, 12:43 a.m. Time I passed the ramp, 12:39. It wasn't until the third message that I stopped calling it coincidence. You forgot to sign the timesheet. You'll remember when you see your reflection in the exit door. This one hit differently because it wasn't about traffic or weather. It was about me. That night, I left work like usual, earbuds in, thinking about the message. As I pushed through the glass exit door, I saw my reflection. Tired, sunken eyes, messy collar, and immediately turned back toward the punch clock. My timesheet was blank. I'd skipped it without realizing. I stood there holding the pen, breathing hard. Someone knew where I worked, knew my route, knew my habits, and more than that, knew what I'd forget, what I'd remember. I called my cell provider and asked if they could trace the number. They said the call wasn't logged as a normal incoming call, just a voicemail drop, no origin point. I tried blocking unknown. It didn't work. The calls weren't constant, maybe once a week at most, never longer than 15 seconds, never a name, never a tone. Sometimes they were trivial. Eat something before your shift. You won't have time later. Don't wash that cup. It'll break. Toss it out. Other times they felt intimate. She's going to ask about your father. Say you don't know. Wear the blue sweater. You won't be cold this time. I kept a journal. I started writing down each message, date, time, result, and slowly, without meaning to, I started living around them. If the message came in before I left the house, I waited to hear it before moving. I stopped making decisions. I started anticipating them. Every new choice felt like a test, like I could either obey or interfere. But I didn't know what would happen if I interfered. That's what started to scare me. I didn't fear the caller. I feared the silence between calls. Because in the silence, I had to decide something on my own, and I couldn't trust what I wanted anymore. I'd look at a restaurant menu and wait, stare at my phone, wonder what the call would have said. Eventually, I stopped calling friends, avoided making plans. What was the point of choosing if I wasn't really choosing? I wasn't being threatened. I wasn't being manipulated. I was just being directed. And that's worse. The call came in at 2:13 a.m. on a Monday morning. I remember the time because I was already awake. I hadn't been sleeping much that month. I played the voicemail in the dark. The voice was the same, even, precise. Don't answer the door on Wednesday. That was all. No follow-up, no detail. But this time, it wasn't framed as a suggestion. It was a command. I listened to it again. Something in the way he said Wednesday made my hands sweat. I saved the message, downloaded the audio file, and went to the police. They were polite. The officer at the desk, a woman in her 40s, asked if I had an ex or a stalker or someone I thought might be harassing me. I said no. I didn't know who it was. She asked what kind of door. I said I didn't know. It just said the door. She leaned back and said, no threat, no name, no number. We can't do anything with that. I asked if they could trace the call. She said no. If it wasn't routed through a number, there's no legal recourse unless a crime occurs. So I have to wait for something to happen? She didn't answer. Wednesday came. I didn't go to work. I didn't turn on any lights. I unplugged my microwave and TV and Wi-Fi, anything that might make noise. I sat in the living room with the blinds drawn, waiting. It rained that night, lightly, not enough to mask sound. I kept the phone with me, but no new messages came. At exactly 9:18 p.m. I heard the knock. 3 soft taps, then silence. I didn't move. 5 seconds passed, then the handle turned. I had locked it. I know I had. But the handle turned and the door opened, half an inch, then stopped. I didn't breathe. No sound, no voice, no shadow in the doorway. Just the soft creak of the hinge. Then, slowly, the door pushed itself shut. I sat there, staring at the frame until dawn. The next day, I checked the deadbolt. Still locked, no scratches, no signs of force. I checked the security cam I'd installed, just a cheap motion sensor, one facing the porch. Nothing, not even a flicker. No movement, no person, just me, inside, watching a door I didn't open. Open. I replayed the voicemail over and over again that night, listening for something. A breath, a tone, a click in the background. But it was blank, just the voice. Don't answer the door on Wednesday. I didn't, and it still opened. I brought everything I had to the police the next week. A USB with the recordings, journal pages with dates, outcomes, photos, everything. A younger officer took notes, said it was concerning, but ultimately no crime had been committed. Could be an AI scam, he said. Might be pulling from your search data or calendar. But how would it know about the exit ramp crash? The timesheet? The door? He shrugged. Weird things happen. But if they're not threatening you, there's not much we can do. I sat in my car outside the station for a long time after that, listening to the messages again. They'd started vague, then helpful, then personal. Now, they were invasive. Still, I obeyed. Every instruction that came in, I followed. Don't take the call. Leave 10 minutes earlier. Skip the next shift. Don't speak to her again. It didn't matter if I understood. I just did it. Because the one time I didn't, the door, something changed, and the calls stopped for 2 weeks. No messages, no late-night voice, just silence. And in that silence, I realized how deeply it had gotten into me. I didn't leave the house. I didn't eat unless I felt prompted. I didn't answer texts or look at notifications, afraid they might be wrong. Then, at 3:06 a.m. on a Tuesday, my phone buzzed. One new voicemail. I didn't want to hear it, but I had to. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. The voice was the same. You're ready now. Then silence. No click, no goodbye, just that. You're ready now. For what? I still don't know. That was 6 months ago. There've been no more calls, no more messages, nothing. But I keep checking, every morning, every night. I still feel like I'm waiting for something I already agreed to, before I knew I had. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. The tenant upstairs that no one ever saw. This happened in 2019 when I was renting the bottom unit of a duplex on the edge of Binghamton, New York. I'd just taken a new job at a regional paper, editing copy mostly, and needed something cheap, close, and temporary. The place I found was older but clean. Narrow driveway, creaking stairs, overgrown yard. There were 2 units, mine on the ground floor and one directly above. I moved in on a Tuesday. I remember because that first night, I heard the noise. It came around 2 a.m., a dull thud directly above my bedroom ceiling. It wasn't loud, just solid, singular. Not furniture moving, not footsteps, just one impact. I thought it might have been someone dropping something, or maybe adjusting something heavy. It didn't alarm me, but it happened again the next night. Same time, same sound, exactly the same. I paused, considered the odds. Maybe it was some kind of plumbing pressure or old building groans. Still, I made a mental note. Night 3, same thing, same hour, same dull thud. By the end of the week, it had become predictable. 2:03 a.m. Thud. I asked my landlord about the upstairs tenant the following Monday. He said someone had been living there on and off for a few years, paid rent in cash, kept to themselves, nothing he'd heard to be concerned about. I asked if he could share a name. He just shrugged, said he'd check but never followed up. I started going to bed later, lying awake, waiting for the sound. I told myself I was just curious, but that wasn't true. I was anxious. I needed to hear it. It became part of my sleep routine. 1:50, brush teeth. 2:00, get in bed. 2:03, thud. 2:04, sleep. I never heard footsteps before or after. Never heard a door. No TV, no voices, just silence. Then that single sound. One night it didn't come. I lay there watching the ceiling, waiting. 2:03 passed, nothing. 2:05, 2:07, 2:12, still nothing. I got up, paced the kitchen, checked my phone for notifications. I felt off. Not scared exactly, but like my body was trying to finish something it couldn't. Finally, around 3:30 a.m., I fell asleep from sheer exhaustion, but the feeling lingered, like something hadn't concluded. The next day I was sluggish, couldn't focus at work. I kept replaying the absence in my mind, wondering what had changed. That night, I stayed up again. Lying there, heart rate rising as the clock hit 2 soak, 2 to 1, 2, 2, thud. I actually sighed, like my body released tension I didn't know I was holding. It had returned, and that made it worse, because I realized in that moment that I had started needing it. I wasn't afraid of the noise anymore. I was afraid of not hearing it. I started recording it. I set my phone to capture sound overnight, just to confirm it wasn't something I was imagining. I listened to the recordings at work the next day. Each one the same. Long silence, then a low impact. Exactly 3 minutes after 2 a.m. Never before. Never after. I tried knocking on the upstairs door a few times during the day. No answer. I never heard movement, no signs of life, but every night, the thud. Eventually, I stopped knocking because some part of me knew I didn't want to meet whoever or whatever lived above me. I kept my apartment tidy. I'm not obsessive, but I like a clean floor. The building was old, floorboards gapped, some seams uneven, but I swept every other day. That's why I noticed the prints. They showed up just after Thanksgiving. A line of faint marks leading from the base of the stairs to the hallway outside my bedroom. They looked like barefoot impressions, not muddy, not wet, just dust pressed into the grain of the wood. I bent down and studied them. 5 prints, left foot first. The heel indent was unusually deep, like the person had walked with weight forward on the balls of their feet. But here's the thing, I always locked the front door, and I was the only one with a key. No one should have been able to come inside. I wiped the prints up with a damp towel, brushed it off, told myself it might have been me, even though I never walk barefoot. That night I waited for the sound. 2:03, thud. But this time it was louder, closer. I froze. It wasn't above me anymore. It was in the wall, or just behind it, not the ceiling, not the floorboards, somewhere else. A liminal space that didn't quite line up. I checked the door, still locked. I tried to sleep, but kept jolting awake, listening. Around 4 a.m., I heard the faintest creak on the hallway floor. I didn't move, just listened. The next morning, there were more prints, 6 of them this time, closer to my door, same direction, same shape. I called the police. The officer who came was polite, but clearly unimpressed. I showed him the prints, told him I'd locked up, explained the thud. He checked the locks. No signs of forced entry, no broken seals, nothing. "You sure you didn't make these yourself?" he asked. I said yes. He made a few notes and left, told me to call back if anything else happened. I cleaned the prints again, then placed a line of baby powder across the hallway, thin and even. If anything passed through, I'd know. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed watching the hallway from my slightly cracked door. 2:03 a.m. Thud, but not above. Outside. It came from the hallway. A dull impact, like something dropped from the ceiling and didn't bounce. I didn't move. Not at first. Then slowly I got up, opened the door. The powder was scattered, disrupted, and in the middle of it, another barefoot print, facing my bedroom. I checked every inch of the apartment. Nothing missing, nothing out of place. Except the fact that the sound was no longer upstairs. It was in here with me. I started researching similar cases, not ghost stories. I didn't want fiction. I looked for academic reports, psychological phenomena, something concrete. I found a few papers online that mentioned a term I hadn't heard before, phantom cohabitation. It described a rare psychological state in which individuals living alone develop the belief, often subconscious, that they are sharing space with someone else. This belief often manifested through patterned sounds, environmental rhythms, or displaced objects. But one phrase stood out: structured auditory phenomena tied to former trauma in the dwelling. I asked my landlord about the upstairs tenant again. He hesitated, said no one had rented it since 2016. I said, "You told me someone lives there." He looked confused. I meant someone did. There was a guy, quiet, always on time with rent, but he passed away. Didn't they tell you when you signed the lease? They hadn't. I asked what happened. Heart attack, I think. No foul play. Happened in his sleep. When? Middle of the night, around 2 a.m., I think. The neighbor below heard a thud. I didn't respond. I couldn't. That night I sat in the dark and waited. 2:03. Nothing. No sound, no thud, no prints, just silence. It stayed like that for 3 nights. I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because something was missing. I'd grown dependent on the structure, the pattern, the presence. On the 4th morning, I woke up to a slip of paper under my bedroom door. No envelope, no handwriting, just one line, printed in faint grey ink. "It's your turn upstairs now." I opened the front door, looked toward the stairwell. The door to the upper unit was open, wide, not a crack, not a sliver, fully open, as if waiting. I haven't moved. I haven't gone up. I just keep living here, waiting for something else to happen. But every night now at 2:03, I hear footsteps, not above, but on the stairs, coming down.